Hello and welcome to another video of my Xamarin tutorials. This is Tiffany. Welcome back. Sorry I haven't put out a video here recently, but as you may know from the details section of this channel, I am a college professor, and so during the semester I find it really difficult to find the time to sit down and put something together. But I definitely wanted to kick something out before I go on vacation for spring break. And so I recently put together a presentation of an app for our local .NET users group, and I strongly recommend if you are in an area where you could get a hold of a user group, they're very helpful in getting to meet other people that you may be maybe interested in knowing through networking, or just wanting to get together with other people and talk about .NET and learn new things. So the way this particular .NET user group works is they have a monthly speaker who does some kind of presentation, and so I was asked to come in and talk about Xamarin. And I wanted to show you the app that I put together for that presentation, but I thought it would probably be more helpful if honestly we walked through the different parts of it and actually built it together. And so the app was really designed to just kind of show off some various techniques of Xamarin. So I wanted to cover the first topic today, which is splash screens. So we often have like a loading screen or a splash screen on our app that we want the users to see when that app loads. So I wanted to walk you through the basics of putting together a splash screen, kind of how they work and some of the features that you can add in. So let's get started here in Visual Studio. I'm going to pop into a new blank Android project. I'm just going to call this like splash screen test or something fun like that. And so while Visual Studio is putting that together, we can start thinking about what kind of image do we want to display on our splash screen. Because typically these are some kind of visual image, maybe a company logo, something like that. What do you want to show? And we have to make sure that it's in the proper format for the screen resolution that we'll be working with. So things to think about. You'll want to get some kind of image or something to use for your splash screen, and let me show you here what I am going to be using for this tutorial. So here is the image I will be using. I just made kind of this green background and found this cute little picture of a rocket, and then just kind of worked them together here in Paint. Now, the app ultimately is it's a space launch app that helps us see upcoming space launches, because I'm really into rocket launches and space and that kind of thing. And so this is my splash screen that I will be using. Of course, you're welcome to go put together anything that you like. So let's get started on our app. So I've already got the project all set up, and we can go ahead and open up like our main activity and our layout and things like that. Now, a splash screen obviously opens before the main activity, and it only opens for a short duration of time. So that's exactly what we're going to try to achieve. And it runs in a separate activity, so we can do whatever we want in the main activity. In fact, if you go ahead and start working on an app, or maybe it's an app you've already made, and then decide you want to put a splash screen on the front of things, then of course that's fine. We just go ahead and set up a separate activity to make that happen. So what we're going to do is first we're going to go to our package manager, because there's actually a support library that we're going to pull in using Nuget. So we're going to come up here to Tools and Package Manager, and we're going to go to Package Manager, Manage Nuget Packages for Solution. And this is where we can look for and browse packages that are available that we can import in. And a lot of these packages, they give us functionality and things that we want to be able to use in our applications. So what we are looking for is the version 7 of the Android Support Utility Library. So we're going to look for Android Support, and we want version 7. And we should start to see a couple of ones pop up here. Now I want you to be careful when you're looking at this list. You always want to look at who is the author, because like in this case there is this Crosslight Xamarin one. We don't want this one. We want the one that actually is published by Xamarin. So the Xamarin Android Support version 7 app compat package is what we want. We select our package name, and then we have to determine, do we want the latest stable, which is ultimately going to be determined based on the SDK version that we are targeting. Now, I don't know that I tampered with it for this project, but we can always go check get out of this window, which version of Android are we targeting. Here we can see 7.0 Nuget. Minimum is 16 Jelly Bean. That's quite the stretch, huh? Now, for the purposes of testing, I don't have a Nuget phone. Wait, yes, I do. I actually just got one. Isn't that fantastic? Now, you can always change which version of Android you're targeting, and then, of course, make sure that the package is appropriate for that version. Now, if you're going to be targeting a previous version of Android, then you'll have to get an older version of the app compat, and you'll have to go back through until you find one that you'll be able to install. So we click Install, and away it goes. And you can watch it down in the output window as it goes, everything that it's installing. It'll add some new references and things to your solution. And when it's finished, you'll see this little finished indicator down here in your output section, and then you can close our Nuget package manager, and we are ready to get started. Actually, back that up. There are two packages we need. I totally spaced out on the fact that there are two. Let's go back to our package manager. There's a second utility package that we're going to go get. Similar to the previous one, but this is a different version and contains some other items that we're going to want to access. So we also want the Xamarin Android Support version 4. And I think I had that already in my drop-down list. Yep. So again, check, make sure that your dependencies is correct, and we'll install this one as well. And that is the end of the packages that we will need for our splash screen project. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about splash screens. Probably the most difficult thing to understand when we're setting up a splash screen in our application is that we can't use one of the built-in Android themes. We have to create a custom theme and then apply it to the activity that is ultimately going to display our splash screen. So I'm sure you're aware you have all these built-in themes in Android that come with the SDK. You can also target them over here by choosing it in the activity tag of what kind of which theme that you want to apply, like light or dark, no banner, those kinds of things. So when our splash screen activity is rendered on the device, it loads in that custom theme. It applies our drawable resource, which is that image I showed you earlier, and then we don't have any layout. So where our main activity uses one of these AXML files, we don't need a layout, or we really can't use a layout when creating a splash screen. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm in my resources drawable section, I'm going to add in that file that I showed you previously, and I'm just going to drag and drop that into the drawable section. So there's my splash logo.png, and I can put my mouse over it, and you can see that that's that image I showed you earlier. And then we're going to create a XML file, which is the drawable portion of that splash screen. And like I said, that is the portion that ultimately, it acts like our layout section or our AXML file. And so we're going to put it in the drawable folder, though. So under the drawable folder of your Solution Explorer, we're going to right-click, we're going to add a new item, and we're going to find in this list an XML file, and we're going to name it splash screen. I'm going to put an underscore in there. So splash screen.xml. And so when we add this, we just get a blank XML file. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up our layout. So basically, what do we want the splash screen to do, or what does it look like? And so the first thing we're going to need is a layer list. Oops, that's a hyphen. And this is where we get our schema. And I don't like typing that all in, so I just copy and paste from a previous project. All right, so I am going to set up two items in here. The first one is going to be a color. And so if, for whatever reason, my image cannot be displayed, then it's going to display just a solid color. And so this is an item, and it's going to be a color, and it's an Android color because we actually pull these from system. And we use the @ Android color, and then with the slash, and then you can pick a system color. So I'm just going to choose green. You can choose whatever color you wanted. You choose white. That would be fine. But this is a regular standard solid color that would be displayed if for whatever reason the file that we're using is not able to be loaded at runtime. Okay, so our second item is going to be that image file, and we have to pull it in as a bitmap. So we're going to use the bitmap, and I'm going to line wrap this so that it makes it easier to read. Android src, so the source, where is our file? It's in Drawable, and we have to go check. What did we name it? Splash logo, all one word. Now you don't put the file extension on these, but they are case sensitive, so you have to be careful about that. The second part of this is Android tile mode. If you do want a tileable or your image file to tile, then you can set this to true. Otherwise, I'm just going to set it, or actually you set it to enabled, disabled. So I'm going to set it to disabled because I don't want my image to tile. And then you can set any other layout type properties, and so I'm going to set my gravity to center so that it's nice and centered up on the screen. And that is it for the XML layout. If you had other items that you wanted to add in, like text, and you could put text directly onto the splash screen, those kinds of things, you could add any of those here in this XML file that ultimately works like our visual display. So just like where we create our layout files for various screens that we want in our app, this is just serving the purpose of a screen for our splash screen. Okay, so we're ready to set up our custom theme, which is what we have to use to drive this splash screen activity. And so these typically go in the values section of our resources. So you can already see that our strings XML file, which lets us set up static strings, is in here. So we're going to come to the values folder. We're going to add a new item. And again, it's just an XML file, and I'm going to name it style. Just whatever you want to name it, style.xml. And so again, we get just a blank XML file. And here is where we're going to set up a custom theme. Now there's a lot of different properties and things that go into custom themes, but for the most part they have to inherit from one of those parent themes that come built in with the Android system. And so the first thing we're going to do is define which theme is kind of the base. What class theme does this inherit from? So we use style name and what we're going to name it. So my theme.base, right? So those of you who are used to any kind of object-oriented programming, since this is .NET, it's the base class being the parent class of the object that we want to inherit from. So our parent is going to be, and you can choose any of the built-in system themes that you want to go with. I'm going to use theme appcompat.lite. And again, any theme that you want to roll with here is fine. Our second item that we're going to add in sets up our base style. So I'm naming my theme. Of course, you name it whatever you want. The parent ultimately being my theme.base. So we have to define that. And then we have to define our drawable splash screen item. So style name my theme dot splash, whatever you want to name your splash screen. The parent being, again, that theme appcompat.lite. And inside of here, inside of this splash screen kind of object, we're going to set up our item. And so this is Android. Can't spell Android today. That's detrimental. Window background. So it fills up the entire window background section of our splash screen. We want that drawable. I keep forgetting what I named it. Maybe I should have named it something more memorable. Splash logo. Again, without the file extension. And then if you want your splash screen to not have the title bar at the top, which is typically the way we want a splash screen because we just want the image, then you need to also set an item that says Android window no title. Be careful at the casing of that. And we're going to set it to true inside of our item here. So again, you can do a lot of different things. This little my theme is very base. It doesn't really do anything other than declaring our window background and explicitly removes the title bar from the window. So make sure that it's full screen and displays the image that we want it to display. So you could do some different things and display different or set up different themes inside of your custom theme. That's not a problem. You can go dig into making a custom theme. That could be a video all on its own. So we're all done with these XML files. We're ready to go ahead and create our activity that is going to hold our splash screen. So we're going to come over to our solution. We're going to right-click on the project, add a new item, and we want an activity. And I am going to name this splash activity.cs. That seems appropriate, right? So go ahead and add that in, and it will set up our activity for us. So there's a couple of things that we have to do to get this thing ready so that it understands that we're loading this activity before we load main activity. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to remove main launcher equals true from our main activity, because this main launcher equals true ultimately indicates to the Android system which activity launches first. And so we don't want main activity to launch first. We want our splash activity. I'm going to move that over here. So you can actually just take that right out of there and add it over here. We don't care about a label. We could take this label off there. But we do want to set up our theme. So the theme should equal at style, because that's where we put our my theme file, mytheme.splash. So it knows where to get its custom theme information. And then just for an extra touch, we're going to do no history equals true, because we don't want this being kind of a navigatable activity. You never want someone to hit the back button and it takes them back to the splash screen. That would be kind of an interesting behavior. So yeah, go ahead and take off, like this. You can tell it's always the end of my day because I struggle with my words. Okay, we need to add in using statements for those two Nuget packages that we added in earlier. So using Android, what was it, util, and using Android support version 7.app. Those two Nuget packages that we grabbed earlier, and you can go ahead and give it a build and make sure that that's nice and clean. So yeah, make sure you got a nice clean build. Everything's all good. And so let's start on our activity. Now I went ahead and flipped this over to our app compat activity because our my theme inherited from one of those app compat themes. This needs to be an app compat activity. So make sure you've changed your inheritance statement there. You've got your activity declaration all set up, ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is come over here to the onCreate, and we're going to set up just basically some logging. Now it's always good to have some logging to make sure that we kind of keep track of what's going on with our splash screen, and we can keep track of kind of where it is. So I like to use log.debug, and so we can do onCreate for splash activity. And that way you can always go through the log and check out what's going on. Oh, I skipped a step. We have to have some kind of tag. So let's set up static read-only string, some kind of tag. When we're calling that debug, it requires a tag. Okay, and then we'll put that tag in there. And that's all we need to do to the onCreate. Now, one other using statement that we haven't added in is using system.threading.tasks. Now, we want to use some threading in this particular instance because you probably have things loading or going on in the background while you are displaying your splash screen. So what we're going to set up is a protected override void on resume. And on resume is ultimately where the magic happens. So we still want to call the base, so that's fine. So there's kind of two things that we want to do in onResume. The first one is when the splash screen first starts up, we're going to give it a task. So our task is, what do we want it to do? I'm going to call it startup work. Now you're going to have to trust me on the syntax here if you're not familiar with doing any kind of asynchronous-based tasks. So a task is basically an activity in miniature that we want it to have run while it's doing whatever it's doing. Now in this case, we don't want our splash activity to do anything other than just display that image. So we're just going to delay the splash screen showing. So if you did have stuff showing in the background, then you could do that. And I'm using this log debug as we go through here so that we can actually watch as this works. So this is going to be performing some startup work. And then we just want to wait. So task.delay in milliseconds. How long? 5 seconds? Sure, that's 5,000 milliseconds. And then we can log again so you can see this happening. Okay, so that's the first part of our task. The second part of our task is what do we want to do when we're done waiting? we want to launch the main activity. So this is our task, which is startup work dot continue with. So continue with automatically runs when our first task is done firing. So continue with takes in a parameter of t, uses this same syntax we saw above. I'm all over the place with this today. Oh, I'm going to come back to this. Okay, so continue with, we want to go ahead and log. So waiting done, launching main activity. So we call start activity. We create a new intent just like we would if we were moving between any other activities in the system. We've done this many times before, opening up other activities in our applications. And so down here, now pay attention to where this goes. It goes at the end of the curly brace. I'm trying to make this bigger so you can see it. But on the inside of that parentheses and closed semicolon, we're going to do comma, task scheduler from current synchronization context. Okay, so here's why this is important. We are running our splash activity ultimately in a separate thread than the new context of main activity. And so our task scheduler will fire up our new context for main activity, and it will do it in the background. So it will not join the current thread of the splash screen so that you can do some proper disposal or whatever else you wanted to do with this. It is important to think about these kinds of things when we're working with multiple activities, is what happens to them when we're done using them. They're still hanging around. They're still waiting in memory. So we do want all of this to work kind of asynchronously, and that's why we use onResume. So we don't want the startup work to slow down or delay the appearance of what our actual app needs to do. When the work is completed, our splash activity is going to launch our main activity, and the user can then begin interacting with the app immediately, and we don't have any kind of delay. So at this point, our splash activity should just work. We should just be able to load up our app, and our cute little splash logo, whatever you chose, should open. Now, we haven't done anything to our main activity yet, short of making sure that it doesn't try to load first. So it'll just dump you right into a generic UI, which is blank. So I want to continue with this. This will be a couple of parts, but we're going to walk through how I set this up, ultimately pulling information from the web service, which had all the information about space launches I wanted to display, doing some programmatic work with JSON. Right, so stick around for a couple parts of this video putting together this little app. But I hope now you understand how splash screens work, and you can start making some cute splash screens that launch on your own apps. And feel free to post up any questions. I'm going to put the whole project up on GitHub, but I will do these kind of separate small things that we're presenting, one video at a time. So if you just want this splash screen code, you can go get it off of the GitHub as well. So until next time, thanks.